callers are muted and they can unmute themselves.
Hello, comrades. Well, we're going to take on a study of the overview that was presented by me to the Black is Back conference on April 9th in Harlem. And the title of that was the electoral process, the 2016 election and the struggle for Black self-determination. That was really the title. And we want to have this discussion because the electoral process is the way by which the majority of the Africans in this country participate in political life and organized political life. The majority of Africans are not members of the African People's Socialist Party, the Hutu movement, or any revolutionary organization. And the majority of Africans who participate in political life actively do so within the Democratic Party of the United States, which is an imperialist organization. It is not a revolutionary organization. It's never been a revolutionary organization. And it has never pretended to be a revolutionary organization until the last few months, when at least one of the contenders for the nomination of the Democratic Party for president of the United States. Well, we feel like it's really important to have this discussion because there is going to be a lot more talked about, a lot more happening around the electoral process, and it's going to continue to capture the imagination of many of our people and other people, not only Africans, but other people. And many people see the potential for advancing, moving forward in the world as something that can only occur within the electoral process. So it's very important for us to have this discussion. It's also important for us to have this discussion because this presentation that was made at the April 9th National Conference on 2016 election, the struggle for Black self-determination, really is a position of the African People's Socialist Party. And it's important for us to understand exactly what this position is about and to be clear on the content of this position. I would like for us to have a really lively and thorough discussion around this question. I'm hoping that people will raise questions about things that are not so clear in the document, and that always occurs. You can't write necessarily a document where everything is clear. And I know that there are things in this document that assumes that people do understand certain questions. Fascism, we talk about, and there are other questions here. So we want to make sure that we have a pretty good discussion so that the outcome of this will be that people are pretty clear on what our position is around this question. The other thing is that between now and November 5th and 6th, where the Black is Back conference will happen in Washington, D.C. Actually, in Washington, D.C., on November 5th and 6th, we'll have a two-day process that will begin with a rally, then a march on the White House for the 5th, and then the 6th, we'll have a conference. And what we've done or intend is for a process to occur where between now and November 6th, we will begin to organize conferences in various states throughout the United States. I'm hoping that, and cities I should mention, I'm hoping that can include Chicago, perhaps St. Louis, probably St. Louis, possibly New York, Washington, D.C., possibly St. Petersburg, Florida, Huntsville, Alabama, perhaps. And there are other places that I did not mention that I'm sure people on this line considered as possible locations that we can have actual conferences. The objective being to establish a national Black agenda for self-determination for African people through the auspices of the Black is Black Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. And we want to, in the various cities throughout this country, to win participation from masses of African people to help forge this agenda based essentially on the principles of unity of the coalition. And that should be able to raise up issues for what it is that the African people have to accomplish or demand as political objectives in order to move forward. Now, our conference, national conference in November, will be occurring just 2 or 3 days before the election, the 2016 election. And our purpose is to be able to say it doesn't matter what the outcome of the presidential election is, that we have an agenda as an African population, something that's been sorely missing up to now. So anyway, that's part of what it is that makes this discussion that we are having today really important. Another thing is that when you talk about making revolution, particularly in a place such as the United States, we start from a recognition, and not just in the United States. The truth of the matter is that all over the world, we're faced with the problem of being oppressed as a nation, African nation of people that's dispersed around the world. When you talk about a nation of people, you're talking about every class force within the nation being oppressed. If we are colonized, then everybody is colonized, including the African petty bourgeoisie. And the African petty bourgeoisie has an interest in ending this colonial relationship, certainly changing or modifying the colonial relationship. The African petty bourgeoisie can actually be a petty bourgeoisie because there's something favorable for that sector of the population that allows it to be an aspiring bourgeoisie, allows it to be better off, generally speaking, than the majority of African people. The African petty bourgeoisie, as a social force, has to rely on this relationship that it has with white power for the influence and resources that it has. And so it benefits from the colonial relationship on the one hand, but on the other hand, it is oppressed by the colonial relationship because given its opportunity, it would become a full-blown bourgeoisie itself. So it is restricted by colonialism in several different ways. It cannot have the same kind of access to capital that white people have. The rules do not, the rules are made in a fashion that restricts its progress. So the African petty bourgeoisie is often opposed to national, to colonialism, but it doesn't mean the same thing as it does for the African working class. The African working class is opposed to colonialism too. But unlike the African petty bourgeoisie, the African working class cannot resolve the profound contradictions that we are confronted with without the total destruction of the social system itself, of this whole relationship that we have. The African petty bourgeoisie can find advantages within the colonial relationship, but the African petty bourgeoisie suffers all the time from this relationship. So we have a situation where we are oppressed as a nation of people. Africans are oppressed as a nation. That includes the African petty bourgeoisie, generally speaking, and the African working class, the African peasants. The whole nation is oppressed. The question is, who leads this struggle to liberate us from the circumstances that we are confronted with as a colonized people?
This conference is being recorded.
In the past, it has generally been the African petty bourgeoisie that has led every movement. every struggle. And the outcome of that has been more advances for the African petty bourgeoisie, but the African working class and poor peasants have suffered on every continent as an outcome. So only a tiny minority of our population has been able to advance. Our responsibility as a party is that we are the party of the African working class, and the African working class is the only social force that can take the revolution to its completion. And so that's what we are about. Now, the African Revolution, the struggle against colonialism was very strong in the 1960s. And it was where the high tide of resistance, not only among African people in this country and other places in Africa and elsewhere, but to peoples around the world, were engaged in a powerful struggle against the whole imperialist setup, against all colonialism. And we were crushed, we were defeated. Our revolution was defeated. That's something that many African petty bourgeois militants don't want to admit today. They like to claim that we weren't defeated, etc. But we were. And it's important to recognize that, because if there was no defeat of the African Revolution, then people are unable to see why then that Obama does not represent progress. And you've seen the bumper stickers and the posters that would hold up Malcolm and King and Obama as though they represent some kind of progression, some kind of positive progression. And that's not been the case at all. Obama represents the defeat of the African Revolution. Jesse Jackal represents the defeat of the African Revolution. The same thing is true with Al Sharpton, and that's one of the things that we're struggling with today, not just those particular people that I just mentioned, but the general defeat of the revolution and what has been allowed to surface and function as nominal leadership of our struggle. So in the early part of the 20th century, when a man named Vladimir Lenin, V.I. Lenin, was leading a movement to build a communist revolution, and particularly in Russia. After the revolution had been defeated, what emerged there were people who call themselves Marxists, but they had to learn how to speak a different kind of timid language, a different kind of language that did not really attack the overall social system. And Lenin used to refer to them as legal Marxists and refer to their politic, their theory, their analysis as legal Marxism, and legal Marxism being that Marxism that was permitted by the bourgeoisie. And it was something that substituted for a revolutionary politic, and much of the struggle that occurred that Lenin was involved in was a struggle against the legal Marxism, the opportunism that stood between the revolutionaries and the actual revolutionaries and creating a genuine revolutionary movement. And that is where we are today. With the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s, we have been looking at the legal Black liberation forces, the legal Black liberation movement. It is a movement that now sees that with the defeat of the genuine revolution, we've got streets named for Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. We've been offered in holidays in the name of King, pictures on U.S. stamps, and this is the place where we are. And we've got all of these people who call themselves revolutionaries, but they're not held to any kind of revolutionary standards. This is the legal, if you will, Black liberation movement. And this is the struggle that we've been involved in trying to overturn as an African People's Socialist Party. We've seen scores, perhaps hundreds and thousands of assassinations and imprisoned Africans and people chased into exile. And as a consequence of the defeat of our revolution, putting down an actual revolutionary movement. And there's been for more than 2 generations no means by which people who are coming into active political life can measure their stance according to any kind of revolutionary standards. Instead, what they've been offered are Farrakhan, Jackson, or and a whole bunch of others. I'm not just limited to those. And a form of opportunism has descended upon our revolutionary movement. So this is part of what it is we are struggling against, and part of what makes the discussion we've been having around the electoral process so significant, because if we don't have a movement that is actually about the seizure of political power, which is what the Black Power movement and the Black Revolution of the 60s had won, as an understanding that we had to have power, political power of our own. If that's not what we're fighting for, if that is not something that is generally understood within the African liberation movement or within the African population, then we're stuck with the situation of having to find our future with the Democrats or Republican Party. What else are you going to do? If you're not talking about your own power, and most of the others don't have the ability to talk about their own power, we're not trying to organize for fighting for actual Black power. And so this discussion that we had in Harlem was a means by which we began to challenge the logic of opportunism and the significance of the electoral process as the primary or only means by which Africans should engage in political life. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the reading. I know that was a pretty long introduction, but I felt like it was necessary to lay a certain kind of foundation before we begin to have this discussion. So everyone should have access to the document. And the electoral process is one that has been perfected over a number of centuries. It established the process within capitalist democracies that provides for generally nonviolent struggle between contending sectors of the white ruling class for control of the capitalist colonialist state. We know what the state is. It was interesting yesterday in the conference where that we attended, and someone was able to quote almost verbatim the presentation that had been sampled by Dead Prez on the state that I had made. But we know what the state is. It also allows the white ruling class to carefully vet all who would represent U.S. white power. The system provides political positions and protocols around almost every question, as well as the corporate advisors that shape and guide the activities of presidential candidates before and after their election to office. So you got this system that's set up, and there are actually different schools of thought. There are actually universities and things like that they pump out these forces who are destined to become advisors to the politicians, to the political establishment, and that's who they work for. And so when you see an election such as not only, but certainly a presidential election, you're looking at a process that has been carefully constructed up and down the line to guarantee the general outcome that's good for capitalism and good for the rulers of this country, generally good for the rulers of this country. And it allows, of course, for different sectors of the ruling class to fight with each other over control of the state. And how do they fight over control of the state? They pick and vet the persons who best represent their positions and where they can see their interests being best realized. They put thousands and millions of dollars into the campaigns of the particular candidates that they want to prevail. they have influences with the media. You will see that there are certain sectors of the media that's closer to the Republican Party and some sectors close to the Democratic Party, and maybe some sectors close to a particular wing of the Democratic Party or a particular wing of the Republican Party. But you can see them when you look at the news. You can see what you're looking at. You can see what's it called? CNN? No, not CNN. CNN is basically Democratic Party. CSNBC is more to the left inside the Democratic Party. They're more inclined to be Bernie Sanders type supporters. Then you see Fox, who is clearly a Republican organization. You see a side of the Republican media. Now, what you must understand about media is that the media are controlled by the corporations. These are corporations themselves. These are billionaires themselves. They are part of the ruling class. The media are controlled by the ruling class itself. That all this nonsense that we've been taught about how the media is sort of above everything and they're objective, et cetera, et cetera. What they do is function as mouthpiece of the ruling class. And we've actually had sectors of the media. I've had a Negro reporter once tell me when we were actually had a press conference and we were trying to get coverage of a particular thing. She said, "You're trying to rain on my parade." This is what the reporter said. You're trying to rain on my parade. This is what I have going for me. And you're talking about this black stuff that's going to do this and that. And the media, they have a particular interest in this. Donald Trump has presented the white ruling class with a problem during this presidential election season. Initially treated as comic relief by the ruling class media, the white billionaire now has the ruling class frantically up in arms in an attempt to destroy his candidacy and guarantee he does not achieve the nomination of the Republican Party. And I said the media. I didn't say Fox. I didn't say the Wall Street Journal. I didn't say CNN. It's all of them. The Republicans and the Democratic sectors of the media are all working to make sure that Trump cannot be successful. And this is because Trump has not been vetted. He does not rely on position papers from the legion of Machiavellian political parasites in the service of other sectors of the bourgeoisie. And I say Machiavellian here. And many people only know of Machiavelli because of Tupac Shakur, and they don't know what the hell that means or anything like that. But Machiavelli was a feudal advisor to the princes. This guy, he wrote, in fact, he wrote a piece called The Prince, where he gives all this advice about what it takes to be a successful leader, etc. And there are people who function in this fashion even today. They are mostly tied to universities and things like this, but they are the ones that the bourgeoisie go to for policy, how to shape and frame policy that represent their interests, et cetera, and to do it in the best possible way. So that's what people like Brzezinski that we've talked about do that. The people who were considered the neocons, they represent a particular view that speaks to the bourgeoisie, and sectors of the bourgeoisie see their interests connected to them. These people are locked into universities, throughout most instances universities, and they create also other kinds of institutions that's funded by sectors of the bourgeoisie themselves. So while Trump's position on most issues are not different from those of the establishment politicians of either party, they are generally unvarnished. Other politicians carry out white nationalist policies, but unlike Trump, they do not say this is what they are doing. For example, although the white candidates of both parties condemn Trump for talking about building a wall to keep Mexicans out of the land stolen from Mexico at gunpoint in the 1840s, none of them talks about the U.S. created fence already existing for that purpose. Nor do they mention the fact that U.S. President Barack Hussein Obama has actually deported more Mexicans than any president in modern history. And none of them talks about why she or he would find the wall preventing Mexican entry into the U.S. as offensive, while supporting the white nationalist settler regime of Israel that is constantly erecting walls to prevent the movement of Palestinian Arabs on their own stolen land. So it's nonsense what they're saying about Trump. They're saying this stuff about Trump, but Trump is saying it while they're doing it. And this is one of the things that's been problematic for just ordinary white people who can't recognize that Obama, many of them can't recognize that Obama is the best thing that's ever happened to them, because they say one thing and do another thing. But if they would come out and say, look, white people, we picked this guy because we've enslaved most people around the world, and they're really upset about this, and they're trying to fight to win their freedom, etc. And they're fighting against America because they think we're white power. So what we're doing is we're using this black guy who's going to represent white power, and you don't have anything to worry about. If they could say that, then all the white people could be with it, because that's why the white people were able to support Ben Carson. The same white people who would hate Obama supported Ben Carson, because Ben Carson, they knew, was a lick spiller. He was for the white people in a certain way. And these are conservatives. The most conservative of the conservatives were supporting Ben Carson. That's why I suspect you could go to a Ku Klux Klan rally and see somebody wearing a Michael Jordan t-shirt because he's a harmless African who's just there to entertain white people. That's why O.J. Simpson upset so many white people because as white as they had made him, etc., he portrayed the whole white thing by killing the white woman and the white guy. He was one of them in a certain way. So you have this policy of saying one thing and doing another thing that has worked for so long, but Trump has gone directly to the white people by saying the things that the U.S. is already doing, but can't admit it's doing, because it would wreck many of the relationships it's got around the world, and it would organize Africans and Mexicans and other people in this country against the United States, and they don't want that to happen. So they've developed this really refined kind of process that Trump is busting out of. So we say that, and none of them talks about why she would find a wall preventing Mexican entry into the U.S. as offensive, again, while supporting the white nationalists. There's a white nationalist settler regime of Israel that stole somebody's land and building walls all the damn time. Everybody knows this. But Trump is a racist or whatever because he talks about building a wall, because Trump says this is what we're doing. This is just an example of the hypocrisy of the white rulers when it comes to the condemnation of Trump. His problem is that the sophisticated political handlers of the other candidates know how to practice the American tradition of saying one thing and doing another, of being for freedom of speech while condoning police beatings and killings of Africans for daring to question a lowly street cop. Nevertheless, in the country where Muslims are routinely arrested and held in secret detention centers and tried without the benefit of seeing evidence, where even today Muslims are being held in a U.S. concentration camp on occupied Cuban land, Trump is characterized as a racist for exposing the deep-seated white nationalist sentiment among millions and perhaps the majority of white people. And this is also something that has to be kept secret. You try to act like the anti-human beliefs of white people is just specific to a small group that might be called the Ku Klux Klan, a small group that's organized around someone who they would call an extremist like David Duke, when the general white population has that kind of stance. And it's not, no matter what they say about Trump supposedly having a relationship with David Duke, who was once the grand something of the Ku Klux Klan, it's not. David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan don't have enough members to fill up those stadiums when Trump comes to speak. Those are ordinary white people. And that's the thing that they don't want to be exposed either to the white people themselves, certainly to Africans and other people who are victimized by white power politics. However alarmed white rulers are of Trump's current success, high-profile black militants are frantic. They have joined the chorus of white electoral political activists claiming that Trump represents the rise of fascism in the United States. And actually, the Africans have led the charge with this characterization of Trump as fascist. While U.S. Senator John McCain was the fascist threat in 2008 during his campaign for president against drone meister Barack Obama, today Donald Trump is the fascist reason for sticking with the Democratic Party candidate. And I think that's really important, Because when they're calling this other guy fascist, what they're saying is, how do you deal with this fascist threat? You vote for the Democrat. This is a pitiful display of the sense of powerlessness experienced by Africans who would lead our movement during this time of imperialist crisis. It is a display of supreme political punkishness that stems from the defeat of the revolutionary black movement of the 1960s and is captured by opportunists who have no vision of liberation through the conquest of independent black political power over our own lives, a situation from which we have not fully recovered. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee demand for black power, Malcolm X's declaration of the ballot or the bullet, and the Black Panther Party agreement with Chinese Revolutionary Mao Zedong that political power comes from the barrel of the gun have all succumbed to sheepish bleatings of Black Lives Matter, Feel the Burn, and Ready for Hillary. It was not Trump and the fascists that killed Malcolm, King, Panthers, Lumumba, and the others. It was not Trump and the fascists that chased black militants underground and out of the US that defeated the black revolution of the 60s. This was done by ordinary non-fascist and sometimes liberal representatives of both ruling class parties and supported by the general white population. Republican and Democratic Party presidents Eisenhower and Kennedy of the US joined with the anti-fascist governments of Belgium and France in arranging the brutal assassination of Patrice Lumumba of what was once known as the Belgian Congo. Even before white people discovered fascism, Belgium and the white world was sucking the blood and resources of Africa and the world and reveling in their so-called democratic tradition. They were democratic colonialists. It is an absolute historical distortion for Africans to use the concept of fascism as the basis of our response to political phenomena. At the very time when white communists and other leftists were demanding a united front against the fascist demons of Germany, Italy, and Spain, the whole white world was luxuriating in the benefits of non-fascist democratic colonialism in Africa and throughout the world. Indeed, the Second Imperialist World War, usually referred to as World War II, was a war to redivide the world, including the colonized Africans and others, among white powers, fascists and anti-fascists alike. It was a time that non-fascist democratic white lynchings of Africans was the national pastime in the US. It was a time when the US president from the Democratic Party, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, supported and beloved by the whole white left, including the US Communist Party, was throwing Japanese with American citizenship into concentration camps here in the US. Whatever the myriad of clever scientific sounding definitions used to explain fascism, what is clear is that fascism is something that affects white people. Fascism is when white governments treat white people in an undemocratic manner, most consistent with the way white governments treat Africans and the colonial peoples of the world. Therefore, the solution for us is not a fight against fascism, which is to fight for a kinder, gentler white power desirable to white people, but a fight for our own independent revolutionary black power. Genuine black leadership would understand this. And I think that's really important because the fascist position is the thing that most of the Africans who are fighting against Trump use as explaining their alliance and fidelity to the Democratic Party, the fear of fascism. So I don't know, I want to just stop momentarily and see if there's anybody who wants to discuss this whole question because this fascist argument is something that's being used against us. And the logic is that in order to fight against fascism, we create this united front with all of the anti-fascist forces. But they're not talking about creating a united front against fascism in order to defeat the system. They're talking about creating a united front against fascism, in this instance, Donald Trump, in order to support another sector of the bourgeoisie in the form of the Democratic Party. Anybody want to say anything about that before we move forward? Any significance to that? Can we see any significance to that? Well,
*6 takes the music off of you, off of yourself.
It didn't come up there.
No. What are we doing?
I don't know. I mean, we seem to do this every week, and I don't want to hold up the discussion. I was hoping that we could get some discussion around this whole issue, because I'm not quite sure how well it's understood. Certainly, it doesn't seem to be understood so much by these so-called revolutionaries and Marxists and people who using the.
All callers are muted. All callers are unmuted.
So is there anything on this before we move the discussion forward?
Yeah, I just really appreciate the discussion, and it's to me it's clear that we're not represented in these elections with Democrats and Republicans. We don't hear ourselves, but we buy into it, and I bought into it.
Mm-hmm.
I just appreciate this discussion because you see that each candidate is, protecting their interests, the people that they're interested in, and they put a lot of money behind them,
Mm-hmm.
and then they act like they're saying something different, and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like this report just really laid it out clearly for me to really grasp that, and how I see the African Socialist Party. We have people that represent the poor working class interests, and then we I look at myself, I have an interest in the poor working class, and I see that people gravitated to it because they see themselves within me, so I'm a spokesperson for the poor working class, and this is what the African Socialist Party is struggling for: Black power, and to win our people to this position, that this is who have your best interest, that your interest is not in this.
Let me tell you, moving forward, because this is a thing that most of us, with few exceptions, do not understand. Uhuru.
I'm sorry, this is Dave. So I had a quick question before we move forward about fascism.
Yes.
So,
That's what
my understanding.
Go ahead.
Like how you said in the simple form, is just the way that the American government deals with its white citizens in a negative manner, opposed to the way that Africans are treated in general. So it's kind of like when Africans get involved in a fight against fascism, it's a fight that's not their own, so to speak. Is that correct?
That's kind of it. Let me work with you on that for a minute. This is why I wanted to stop and talk around this issue of fascism. Because fascism, when people talk about fascism, usually they're talking about what they saw in Germany with Hitler and the Nazis, in Italy with Mussolini, El Duce, as he was referred to, and in Spain with Franco. And these were actually popular governments among the majority of the white people there, except Spain might be questionable about Spain at a particular time. They were popular governments. Hitler, did incredible things to rescue Germany from the defeat that it had suffered in the First Imperialist World War. It redeemed the German people who felt like they had been so mistreated and become sort of like a colony of the rest of Europe, and lost a lot of their possessions. For example, at the end of the First Imperialist War, Germany, which was initially the ones who controlled like Rwanda and Burundi, when Germany lost the war, then the white countries gave Rwanda to the Belgians. You understand? They gave them, okay, you lost the war, so now you get Belgium. And that meant Germany wasn't getting those resources anymore, and some German land was taken to settle that war, etc. The Germans were defeated. They came out angry. They were dispossessed of a lot of colony and other territories that they felt should have been their territory. And so Hitler stepped in, especially during this time of the Great Depression, and mobilize the German population and, overturn those defeats, began to take territory throughout Europe, began to make aggressions in other places around the world. This is what Germany was doing. The huge popular infrastructure projects were created under Hitler. The Volkswagen, the automobile Volkswagen, which in Germany means people's car. This was a national socialist. They were national socialists. That was the name of the organization. The Nazis come from the National Socialists. So they did all of this, and he was popular. Thousands and hundreds of thousands of white people, Germans, came out to rallies with Hitler. They did the same thing with Mussolini. But the thing that Hitler did was he attacked the Jews inside Germany and kicked off this whole process. And then he began to take territories that other imperialist countries had claimed as their own. I mean, Hitler was going to take the whole thing. I mean, France, he invaded France. He attacked England, Belgium, Norway, all of these countries. Hitler was gobbling up the whole damn thing. And this was the fascists, right? But he was fascist, essentially. We recognize the fascism essentially because of what happened to the Jews. And then Mussolini was a fascist. Thousands of people, popular supporters of Mussolini, and who was pretty inept, except, as they used to say, they kept the trains running on time. That was in Italy. And Franco, again, in Spain, was a fascist government. So and the other thing that the fascists did was they wiped out the communists when they could. They were killing the communists and socialists, locking them up, doing all kinds of things to the communists and to so-called left wings. They burned unpopular books. They didn't like these books. They don't represent us. Got rid of them. Except they were the fascists. Now they've come up with several different kinds of definition. What is fascism? And none of them makes any sense. But the point is that even if fascism is bad, even if the Jews got treated horribly, even if white people in Germany, other white people than Jews in Germany and Italy and France and Spain lost certain democratic rights, all of them, fascists and non-fascists, were colonizing black people, were lynching us in the streets of America, and the anti-fascist government of the United States that waged the war against German fascism was locking up Japanese citizens in concentration camps in the United States. So clearly this thing that they want to say about fascism is something, a definition they've come up to deal with phenomenon that impact on white people. So, and I don't even understand why you got to come up with a special definition when governments are killing and murdering people, when this stuff has been happening since the beginning of capitalism that came into existence as a consequence of killing African people, colonizing African people, stealing the land from the so-called Indian people, etc. And the horrible crime that they claim Hitler committed of 6 million Jews was surpassed a million several times over with the more than 10 to 12 million African people who were killed by Leopold of Belgium in Congo alone. So what is it that makes this fascism such a horrible thing? What am I supposed to be afraid of? At the same time America was fighting in Germany against the fascist Germans, Africans were being lynched in this damn country, and nobody was talking about what was happening to us. So now I'm being told that my thing is to fight against fascism when I don't stand a chance against the police department in Ferguson. I'm supposed to be fighting against fascism. I'm supposed to be fighting to keep stuff like it is when the way it is doesn't work for us at all. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Chairman, it just hit me with what this whole thing's about, because I didn't understand the question, but I understand now, and I just really appreciate this discussion. And tell me if I'm wrong. It's kind of like what white people always do. We fight all day wars.
Exactly.
And so they make this whole thing about you know, we had to protect their interests.
Exactly.
And then because I hear a lot of Africans saying it on
Yeah.
Facebook, oh, you can't vote for
Yeah,
Trump.
yeah.
This is horrible.
Yeah,
You know, he's for fascism,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And again, like Becky,
Yeah.
you know, we fought for her and became feminists.
Yeah.
And it only benefited white women.
Yeah.
You know, so
I mean, so the whole thing that if you don't have your own agenda, what happens is the agenda of your oppressors then becomes your agenda, and you're never fighting for yourself. You're always fighting for somebody else. So how do you fight against fascism? You fight against fascism, that's Trump, right? You fight against them by doing what? By voting for a damn Democrat,
right,
which keeps the whole thing working for you. It was Hillary and Bill Clinton that put 100,000 cops. That's who killed Mike Brown.
Yeah.
Wasn't Trump who killed Mike
Yeah.
Brown. It was Clinton who killed Mike Brown, and it's Obama who backs it up
Yeah.
and is attacking, you know, people all around the damn world. So they're not fascists, but I'm supposed to be afraid of the fascists. And that's a statement about I'm satisfied with the situation I'm in right now, and I just don't want Trump to make it to do something bad to me. Come here, guys. Yeah.
Another side of that is this whole thing about that we have to understand as oppressed and colonized people here, that when we hear this word fascism, how it impacts on us in a certain way, because, you know, you see on one side Bernie and Trump almost crisscrossing, you know, in terms of the support. But what is happening is white people are galvanized in a certain way, and nobody is saying in terms of the leaders, what does that fascism mean? Every time we see it, you talked about it historically, how it showed itself historically. But what does it mean for Africans right now? Besides running to vote for Hillary, what is the danger of what is happening right now to us, you know, to Africans? You know, what does it mean? How does it manifest itself, you know, when you see white people moving in this way?
Well, that's a question. I mean, that's a question independent of the discussion about fascism. It's a question because that's what you see. Anytime you see mobs of white people who are working for white interests, you have to be afraid because white people working for white. And here's the thing: this is an objective truth. I'm not talking about white people are dirty MFs or anything like that. I'm talking about it's an objective truth. If you've got a group of people that live as an expense, everything they've got, every dream, every college education, every paved street, every low taxes, cheap oil, all of that requires everybody else being oppressed. And now they're fighting against their oppression. They're fighting against to make their situation better. They don't like the way their situation has deteriorated. What they are doing, independent of what they think of themselves, they think of themselves as wonderful. But what they are doing is trying to reinforce the oppression, exploitation of Africans and other people around the world, because that's what makes them better. That's the thing that keeps them in shape. The reason they are in trouble now and all of them are upset is because people everywhere are taking back their stuff. That's why there's a threat to the student loans, a threat to old white people being able to have their retirement funds and stuff like that. It's not because a Democrat or a Republican. It's because of the people saying Allahu Akbar and taking back their stuff in Afghanistan and fighting them in Iraq, and people who are rising up and fighting them all around the world, taking back their resources. Then they ain't got so much that they can give to your student loan. They can give to the 60-day vacations and what have you that white people are accustomed to having all over Europe, that they can give you, what, a half year off for maternity leave. What in the hell, for not only for the women, but the men too. This is the kind of stuff that happens throughout Europe, but it happens because they're bleeding us to death in Africa and all these other places. And people saying, the white people are saying, we want our stuff. And that I am now going for Trump because he tells it like it is and because he wants to get our stuff back. He's the one who can do it. And then Sanders is saying more or less the same thing. He's saying it differently, but the same thing is that he's going to take care of the white people. I'm going to give you free university. How are you going to get free university? Where are you going to get it from?
Right.
You understand?
Right.
And he's going to give free healthcare and all these other things. And the only way he can do it is by expropriating more value that's being lost in these places where imperialism is being defeated. You see?
Yes.
And so when you see these white mobs, and anytime the economy gets bad, get a gun, because white people are going to do something horrible to you. You understand? If they can. So, and so when you got these white mobs who are supposed to be on different sides of the question, but they ain't on different sides of the question. All of them are fighting for the capitalism and imperialism. None of them are anti-imperialist. Not one of them. They just opposed to how the thing is working now in terms of what share they are getting, what share we are getting as young people, and is Social Security going to be here when I get old? And even this is something that's really interesting, because this has been one of the, they don't talk about it so much right now, but this has been one of the things they talk about. Social Security is not going to be available, you know, for the next generation and what have you, but it's never been available in general terms for African people, because Social Security, you get Social Security when you're 65 years old, but the average lifespan of an African man is 62. So it's the white people who are getting the Social Security. The money you pay in the Social Security, even though you may get some of it, generally speaking, it's the majority of that money is going to white people who already got every damn thing.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. One of the things that I was struggling, that I wanted to pull out from that discussion, is the fact that our people are disarmed. Nobody is arming them for the danger that's coming, not because of, you know, Trump, but white people now, and we see it even at the rallies, they start beating up on Africans. It's the Africans, that foolhardy Africans that happens to be in there. But we see a certain kind of aggression that's coming right now. And I think that one of the things that you had said is that nobody's telling our people to get armed, you know, and if that doesn't happen, we have the same situation that happened in the church, where people sat and wait for this man to kill him. You know, that people have to know that the solution is not, you know, voting for Hillary or whatever. You know, we got to see that this is a call for us to now begin to prepare to defend ourselves.
Well, you know, that is true. I mean, when you see this kind of stuff, but the basic thing, I understand your position, comrade, I really do. But the basic thing, the basic weakness that we are confronted with is that Africans have no direction. No. Period. No direction. And so we are susceptible, whatever the white people say do, one way or the other. That's the thing that disarms us, because that's what I started off by saying, that, you know, in the 1960s, even though we were not all on the same page exactly on every question, we were all more or less on the same page when we were talking about national liberation. So we weren't fighting to be Democrats or Republicans. Even King wasn't fighting to be a Democrat or a Republican. Even King didn't do that. He wasn't Jesse Jackson running around for the Democratic Party. Malcolm, the ballot or the bullet. You know, I mean, these were the questions that were being called all down the line. So we had an independent kind of agenda. And and you saw some crossovers, and you saw some overlapping, and sometimes not when in the Black movement, but it was a self-determination movement. We were defining our direction. When you don't have no goddamn direction, then whoever is driving the bus, that's where you're gonna go. And right now, that's the struggle that we're involved in right now, is to say that we have opportunism that's a grip on, and you know, all that other stuff is true. You know, Africans should be storing guns and oiling them and doing all the other kind. That is true. But even if we do that, we got no direction. And this is the struggle that we're involved in now, to conquer opportunism, to take and say this struggle is for national liberation. Because if it's not for national liberation, what they're going to do except go for the best Democrat. You know, or the Republicans trying to leave, because we've been Republicans, we've been Democrats, you know, all this other stuff we've been. And the best opportunities had, the thing that really caused the crisis. We didn't cause a crisis when we were members of the Democratic Party. We caused a crisis when we were Black Panthers, when we were Jomo, when we were the Nation of Islam, when we were all these other kinds of things. I think that's really important for us to understand. And it's also important for us to understand that electoral politics did not get us the damn vote. We didn't have the vote, and it was what got the vote, if that's so important, was Africans in the damn streets. It was Malcolm saying the ballot or the bullet. It was King and Fannie Lou Hamer, all these other people challenging the whole damn thing. But if you put your stuff in there with them, then you can't even fight against them, because you become one of them, you know, or at the service of them. Uhuru. So that's part of what I think is really critical for us to understand going forward. That's what you know, part of what I want us to get to. So we say that, I'm on page 6. I'm going to try to read pretty quickly. Everybody has this document, and you know, we've looked at it before, and we didn't talk about it in depth. So I wanted to come back. And I know most people know what fascism is, and some of the stuff, you know, it was an issue years before most of the people in that movement were even born. But people call themselves communists and leftists and things like that. They know what fascism is. They studied this. And that's what we keep hearing. I talked to a comrade on the phone maybe 3 weeks ago he's telling me that I should call Amina Baraka, Amiri Baraka's widow. And I said, well, what's up? And he said, because fascism, we got to prepare for fascism, struggle against fascism, because that was Amiri Baraka. That was his argument when Cynthia McKinney, running in the Green Party, was going to let fascism come because we're going to do just like happened in Germany in the 1930s, which is the most ridiculous argument. I mean, people, you don't have to go to Germany to get lessons of how to deal with the electoral situation as an African. And but that's what they were talking about. It's going to be like Germany in the 1930s because the left was divided. And what the hell are you talking about? Because anyway, I don't want to belabor that. It's just such a false argument that it's very difficult. We could spend the rest of the day or longer talking about the problem with that, the way that looked. So we say genuine African leadership is similarly unimpressed with Democratic Party presidential contender Bernie Sanders as a solution for our advancement. Sanders has succeeded in winning the support from several high-profile Black activists, some of whom are legitimate militant opponents of various political expressions of our oppression. And you can be a militant opponent of various expressions of our oppression and still be a damn opportunist. That's what Black Lives Matter. They are militant opponents. They'll get out and they'll disrupt campaigns and they'll events and they'll block interstates and highways. But toward what end? You understand? That's the fundamental question. It's still opportunists. And what is an opportunist? An opportunist is those who will sacrifice the long-term interests of the revolution and for the short-term goals of a certain sector of it's the petty bourgeoisie. Petty bourgeoisie is not interested in overturning the social system, which is the long-term goal. What they're interested in is changing the heart of the ones who run stuff that benefits them. So they're looking for a short-term solution. Let Hillary, we're saying, damn that. If we work for Hillary, it's going to be because we are working somehow to make the revolution, to overturn the social system. But they don't place even these things that they're doing within the context of a long-term goal of overturning the social system. And that's what makes them opportunists. And so it doesn't matter how militant you are. You may be the most militant opportunist in the world. And you may be actually believe in it. You may be honest, and you may not be like Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and some of the other clowns who are simply out there for the money. You may be honest, but the honest opportunists are the worst kind. And because unlike Jesse Jackal and Sharpton, you come out Jesse Jackson with a stick and you can make him change his mind. But an honest opportunist is motivated by conviction. Damn it. They are the worst kind. So don't tell me that they're all right because they didn't really mean to be so. No. That's got nothing to do with it. When you sell out the long-term interests, it doesn't matter what your intentions are. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so we're not influenced by that. So many see Sanders as a refreshing alternative to the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton, whose political reputation has been sullied beyond repair, most recently as a partner in crime with her husband, who put 100,000 policemen in the streets of the US to occupy colonized African communities and appease the bloodthirsty requirements of white people for Democratic Party popular support. Hillary, who working with the Obama regime presided over the attack on Libya and the execution of Muammar Gaddafi, has further exposed herself as a shameless political hustler at the beck and call of bankers and financiers who control both political parties from smoke-filled rooms out of sight of the general public. Nor can the history of the Clintons' looting of mineral resources throughout Africa, especially Congo, be covered over forever. We continue to be nauseated by the Clinton Foundation's looting of the $10 billion donated by people from all over the world for our people in Haiti following the 2010 earthquake. The majority of those resources have never gone to Africans in Haiti, as thousands still live in desperate conditions. While it is perfectly all right for the obvious political leeches, preachers and the like, and the general mass of politically uninformed Africans to support Clinton, the sophisticated militant and progressive and leftist Black notables could not openly support the Democratic Party during the primary season through an affiliation with Hillary Clinton without exposing their own opportunism. Hence, feel the burn. And I said here they couldn't support her during the primary season because what are they going to do when if Bernie Sanders doesn't get it, and that seems not to be in the cards at this moment? What are they going to do if Bernie Sanders doesn't get the Democratic nomination? Are they going to then turn their back on the struggle against fascism? Mm-hmm. And then, no, who are they going to vote for? Hillary. So during the primary season, what happens during this process right now, what do they call this? What do they call this preliminary process? They call it the what?
Primary.
Right now, what are we looking at now? During this process right now, what is happening is Bernie Sanders is bringing more people into the Democratic Party. And so what you're going to have is a whole bunch of young people, many of whom may never have participated before, but Obama did the same thing. They now come into the Democratic Party. So if Obama doesn't get the nomination, Hillary gets the nomination, and she gets all those people who have come into the Democratic Party as a consequence of Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders is going to work to get Hillary elected. Yeah. So all of these people who are out there supposedly, opposed to Hillary, etc., you will see them in the same camp. You will see them running and doing the kind of work to get Hillary elected. So we say Bernie Sanders is acceptable to progressive Black leaders because he is a non-revolutionary opportunist who uses words like socialism and revolution as attractors for other non-revolutionary opportunists. He is acceptable because he does not threaten the system of capitalism resting on the colonial oppression and bone-deep exploitation of our people. Sanders nearly promises a paltry $15 per hour minimum wage bribe to the workers who create all value and profit for the capitalist system on stolen land using stolen labor and resources. Sanders also calls for free university education and universal health care, like that which exists in certain European countries. And although he does not specifically speak to any of the critical issues confronting African people, his is a rising tide lifts all boats kind of political influence that has proved successful in winning the support of Black opportunists in the past. Whatever success Sanders has with the African community will reflect the weakness of the U.S. front of the African liberation movement. In the first place, only those who attach no revolutionary significance to the term can consider Sanders an affirmed Zionist or socialist. As quietly as it is kept nowadays, a socialist is not someone who simply makes a declaration. It's not a feeling. It is not a beneficent capitalism that takes good care of the workers. Socialism is the early stage of communism, a point in which the workers, under the leadership of their own independent revolutionary party, guided by advanced revolutionary theory, have destroyed the state power of the white ruling class and themselves become the state on the road to the development of a classless society without exploitation and oppression. That's what socialism is. Socialism is that point where an economy based on private ownership of the means of production has been transformed to socialized ownership of the means of production. This is a big difference from giving the workers $15 an hour of all the value that they have created. While Sanders has complained about the control of the electoral political process by what he calls the billionaire class, he has not condemned imperialism itself. At best, Sanders is calling for an improved, more perfect imperialism. There's also much ado being given to what is called the enthusiasm gap. This is what Comrade Gaidi was just mentioning, between the Democratic and Republican Party supporters during this primary election season, with the Democratic Party being described as having an enthusiasm deficit within its base. Actually, that is incorrect. The enthusiasm gap is only real if one subscribes to the definition of the ruling class pundits and media who base this gap on the lack of turnout for the Democratic Party's presumptive winner when compared to the dynamism injected into the Republican Party by the participation of Donald Trump. And you know, this whole thing about political parties can warp and distort your understanding and your ability to see what it is that you're looking at, because the two political parties are simply a manifestation of the interests of the bourgeoisie. And when you see these political parties, you're not looking at different countries. You're not looking at, you know, I mean, this great divide that they would have. All of these American patriots that you're talking about, they're American patriots on the Republican side and the Democratic. When you see all these white people, they're American patriots. So this whole notion of the Democrats over here and the Republicans over there, that's separated by this great divide, is nonsense. It's illusory. So we're saying that the fact is that there is tremendous enthusiasm for the candidates of Sanders and Trump, who had been considered the outliers of their parties until Trump became a serious contender for the Republican nomination. So in reality, there is an enthusiasm gap between the overlapping masses of white people united with Trump and Sanders and those united with the establishment leaders of both parties. This is where the enthusiasm gap is. It's not between the Democratic and Republican parties. It's between all those people who followed Trump and Sanders and the establishment Democrat and Republican Party leaders. Do you understand? That's where the enthusiasm gap is. You got all these white people who are dissatisfied on the Republican and the Democratic, right. and they are the ones who are breaking all the rules. They got presumptive leaders. Bush was supposed to be the nominee for the Republican Party. Trump dusted him, you know, and all of the others who are out there. Trump did that in his base of white supporters. Then you got Hillary, who was supposed to be the presumptive nominee, and she's catching hell from Sanders and all these other white people who follow Sanders. So you got this whole enthusiasm of white people who are in motion, and the problem that each of all these white people have is dissatisfaction with the establishment leaders. Do you understand? That's where the thing is. So you got all these white people who don't have no leadership, right. Who don't have no leadership. They don't recognize the establishment leaders as being their leaders. So Trump steps in, Sanders stepped in. And this is the thing that I think needs to be recognized more than anything else. Forget the Democratic Party characterization. Forget the Republican Party characterization. You got white people who don't identify that much with either the Democrat or the Republican parties who are following Trump and Sanders. Right. And that's the thing that I think must be understood. And so what we say is this reveals a serious political contradiction that is ripe for exploitation by a genuine revolutionary movement. You know, that's what you got to do. If you're talking about you're a revolutionary, you find, how do you exploit this relationship? How do you exploit the fact that the vast majority of people who are engaged in political life in the white community show terrible dissatisfaction with the establishment leaders, of the Republican and the Democratic Party? Do you see? Don't forget that Democratic and Republican Party stuff. Forget that, because what you got is a whole bunch of white people who are expressing severe dissatisfaction with the establishment, and they don't have any leadership inside the establishment, and that's why they go for Trump, who is the anti-establishment guy, and Sanders, who is the anti-establishment guy. You see what we're saying? Yeah. You're supposed to exploit that contradiction. Yeah. You say all these white people, you're supposed to find a way to exploit that contradiction if you're talking about revolution. Yeah. It is white people following lily white political agendas who are in motion. This is a problem because most Africans are trapped in the white nationalist bourgeois-controlled Democratic Party, either as supporters of Clinton or Sanders. What we are really viewing here is an African leadership deficit that is complicated by a deep-seated opportunism within the African community that has gelled since the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s that killed King and Malcolm, destroyed the Black Panther Party and other revolutionary organizations, and jailed and dispersed the cadre upon whose backs our revolution was fought. The African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement not only survived the imperialist onslaught against our struggle for national liberation, for our freedom from the U.S. colonial domination of our people, but we have continued to struggle and build throughout the years of defeat and terror. That's what we have done as a party. Our objective is to win our total liberation. We are determined that no one else should ever rule African people again, either directly or indirectly through neo-colonial stooges. That's what we have been doing. Every day our work is in preparation to win our revolutionary liberation and to govern ourselves. We are serious about the contest for Black power. For us, it is the only logical basis for all the work we do. Every demonstration, every election campaign, every institution we build is for the purpose of taking and wielding Black political power over our own Black lives. But more than this, we recognize that the socialism that Sanders talks about is impossible within the framework of the existing system and the framework of his own imagination. For example, Sanders, like most other candidates, and like Obama before him, has stated emphatically his opposition to U.S. and white reparations to African people colonized within the United States. He is not very different from most white people in this regard, or from white socialists for that matter. But for a socialist, opposition to reparations would be difficult to justify in an era of independent revolutionary Black leadership. This is because the fundamental struggle within the capitalist system is that struggle by workers to take back the value of labor stolen by the white rulers that is generally recognized as surplus or profit. So Sanders is either talking about white socialism, often called National Socialism, usually associated with fascism, or he is not a genuine socialist, or both. There can be no struggle on earth by workers for a return of stolen value from labor that is more critical than the struggle of African people whose colonization and enslavement extorted the greatest expropriation of forced labor in human history. How can you do that? How can you say that you're a socialist and understand that socialism is about the workers being able to take back the expropriated value, the value that has been taken for them, that's usually recognized as surplus or profit? How can you say that you are socialist, which means that you're for those things on the one hand, but be against reparations, when the greatest amount of stolen value in human history has come from African people? Where can you find any other example of an amount of value that's greater, that's been stolen from working people, than what you've seen with the enslavement and colonization of Africa and African people around the world? Of course you can't do that. And that's one of the things that gives us a problem with all these people who, follow this this socialism that Sanders is talking about. Of course, Sanders cannot genuinely agree with the reparations demand, because this is the demand that gets to the crux of the matter. The fact is that it is the stolen labor and resources of Africa's and the world's colonized people that constitute the pedestal upon which the entire white capitalist social system rests uneasily today. It is what Karl Marx called primitive accumulation, but which is better defined as the parasitism that built and sustains the white-centered world economy and white people up to now. It is better defined as parasitic capitalism. Indeed, the crisis of imperialism that Trump and Sanders supporters are responding to today is a consequence of the world's oppressed fighting to take back our own resources for our own future. It might even be called armed reparations. This is true from Afghanistan to Harlem. It is true throughout the entire African world, on nearly every continent. Now, for the first time in history, the world is ripe for the revolution that can usher in real socialism, not just an opportunity for socialists to take power, as has occurred in every instance of the past. This is why we say the road to socialism is painted black. This is why the African liberation movement must forge our own independent agenda for our liberation. This is why we must develop a selfish agenda that speaks to the needs of our people, regardless of whether white political parties and white people can unite with us or not. The fundamental contradiction we are confronted with is not the unwillingness of white political institutions and or white people to unite with our agenda. The fundamental contradiction for black people in the entire world, colonial subjects, who too often tremble at the very thought of upsetting white people and white systems, is the absence of our own independent agenda and the revolutionary leadership willing to lead our people in its pursuit. That's what I wanted to say. So I'm going to stop reading now and then just open it up for discussion for people who might want to discuss what we've talked about up to now. Uhuru. Any discussion? Is it, are we muted? I mean, are people muted?
No, they're not.
So any discussion, comrades? There's a deafening silence here. Uhuru.
Chairman, this is Sophie.
Yes, Fofi.
I was an 18-year-old voter when they first started at 18. So my question now is, with all the information that put out, I know none of it is true. What do we do? What do we see? How do we evaluate what's going to help our revolution and our freedom? So I'm just lost.
Don't be lost. Read the 14-point program of the African People's Socialist Party. Read even the demands that one of the things that we're doing with this coalition work is helping to create and develop the Revolutionary National Democratic Program that NPDM has been working on for a while now. And we're creating our own program. That's the problem, that we don't have our own agreed upon program and or direction. And that's what we are in the process of forging now. That's why we have to turn loose this other stuff. Because if you don't know, you just can't get on the damn bus if you don't know where the hell you want to go. You know, and that's what Africans are doing. They're jumping on this bus, but we haven't determined ourselves where it is we want to go. So that was the power of the Black Revolution of the 1960s, and this is what you, Fofi, this is what the Uhuru movement is in the process now of trying to forge a general direction of where it is that we want to go, and so that African people don't have to just be lost and flitting from this place to that place based on what somebody else says, but what you do now is you're able to say, how does what they say fit into my agenda, to our agenda as a people? That's why the 14-point programs, that's why the tactics and strategy for Black liberation, you know, we know what it is that we want to do, and that's what we promote. So we can, and the other thing is this, a lot of individuals who claim that they're doing this and that, for example, People's Organization for Progress, the brother said that the reason they are voting for Bernie Sanders is because they are creating a situation where they're going to push Hillary Clinton to be more on the side of the African people or the revolution or something to that effect, or us. Not, he didn't say revolution. But the fact is that New Jersey can't do that, and a single organization in New Jersey can't do that. We have to build a whole movement, and the people have to be won to that movement. You can say that's what you're doing, but that's not what you're doing. That's your program. No matter whatever else you say, you have taken an opportunistic stance to get Bernie Sanders elected. It's not connected to any other agenda. So individuals can't do it. That's why we create revolutionary political parties with an objective. That's the thing that that we continue to promote. And so you're in the right place, Fofi. With the Uhuru movement and with the direction that we are moving in now for self-determination. And those are not just hollow words that we just throw around. Sometimes people may not understand them, and then we have a responsibility to say, hey, I don't understand what the hell you're talking about, which is why this political education process takes so long. Every one we do is because I start from the assumption that most of the people who I'm talking to are new to political life. They've never had these discussions before. So I go through all of this stuff, long-winded stuff, to try to bring people up to date, up to par, to try to fill in like a lot of the gaps that I know exists in your understanding of these questions. And even this thing, we just went into this whole discussion of fascism, because even though you don't understand it, doesn't mean that it's not kicking your ass. And so 4 feet, I know that there's confusion around some of these questions, but stay with the Uhuru movement and the party, and you will be moving in the general direction that's going to be helpful. And what we do is we move as an organization, as a movement, and as a unit. And as a consequence of doing that, we will shape the direction of the whole goddamn world. And that's what the significance of organization is. In the beginning, it's 1 or 2 of us. And the 1 or 2 of us influence more and more. And pretty soon, the opinion of that 1 or 2 becomes the opinion of 100. And after that, the opinion of that 100 becomes an opinion of 10,000. And after that, the opinion of that 10,000 becomes the opinion of the majority. That's the thing that we're doing all the time. That's what we're working toward. So that's what you're having that radio station is about, 4 feet. It's, I mean, I know what has to be really understood is that just everybody who says black is not saying anything. Just because you say black, you're not saying a damn thing. The question is, the question we're always looking at, does what we're having now, this discussion, does that contribute to independent black liberation of our people? And how do we promote stuff that contributes to that? And that's the thing that informs our practice. I'm going to be in St. Louis, I think June 3rd and 4th. And this is the thing, I think I'm going to be there for the thing that Zaki is going to be doing. This is going to be with black elected people. That's his piece. And we're going to see how we can shape and influence that so that we can create a broader front of people who are moving on a trajectory that's for national liberation. Now, when they say national liberation, they will mean something entirely different from what we mean. Yes. The thing is, we want everybody to say national liberation. When everybody says it, then they open the door for us to move in the direction of national liberation the way we understand it. We're going to be the best organized, most dedicated, most disciplined forces in the whole damn world. So all we want is everybody to say, this is what we want. Mean what you want to mean by, but we know what we mean by it, and that's what we're going to take advantage of. So that's how we function. Anybody else, comrades? Uhuru.
I had a quick question. In response to someone that may say that they understand that voting is maybe not the solution, and voting may not be the answer for African people, but they still vote because they say that certain people running for office run on certain platforms and certain policies, and those policies are better if opposed if someone else was elected. How do you respond to someone who talks about that?
Well, sometimes that'll be true, but the biggest problem we have was when someone talks about that, it's someone who's acting as an individual, and what the individuals see as being true may not be true. That's why it's important to be a part of organization that has a platform. You can't win freedom as an individual. You can't have an individual program to free African people. You become a part of organization with a platform, with a vision for the whole population, because what's good for the individual often ain't good for the whole people. And in fact, white power recognizes that, and white power will offer you a deal as an individual if it comes at the expense of the whole people. So it may be true that a particular candidate can be helpful, or a particular policy may be helpful. But it's not up to you as an individual to make that decision. What you got to do is become organized and come into organization where there's a whole program and platform that advances the liberation of your people, so that guarantees that what you do is not something that's simply self-satisfying. And it's a form of certain kind of arrogant narcissism that assumes that you as some kind of individual will, be able to pick out these policies that's going to make all the difference. Uhuru. Yes, come. Yes.
Chairman, I just really appreciate this, and I know when you made the call to New York a week ago when we went to that conference, you made a call to the party to be there, and this conversation just really feeds into like how we have to move and understand what this means to the revolution, because the people, the hood, and poor working class really know. They don't have the words, they don't have the understanding, but they know this don't work for them. Yeah. but they don't know why it don't work
Yeah,
for them. And
yeah.
it's for us to take it to them
Yeah.
to expose the contradiction in this whole thing and say, well, this is not the end all.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I got hope, and this is the hope.
Yeah.
You know, so I just really hope that we all really grasping what is being laid out here and how we have to really move and how we have to really organize and how we have to really go and explain and sum up what we take, and we just can't take this in. We have to be able to, like, you know, eat it and then be able to throw it back up on people.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah. And I think that I think that's true. And there will be times, for example, when the whole part of the whole movement may even move in some electoral situation, because it's up to us though. But if we do, it's going to be because it contributes to the liberation of this whole thing. And sometimes we'll do stuff to expose the contradictions in the system. Sometimes to run in an election that gives you free television, free media, you know, all of this other kind of stuff, and also give you access to Africans that you never would have access to, because all the church people come to this stuff, all these other kind of people come out, and then you use this opportunity to put forth a genuine national liberation. And so in the beginning, the Africans going to vote for the Democratic candidate. No matter how radical and sensible your stuff is, in the beginning, they're going to go with the Democrat because that's their grandmama was a Democrat and all this other kind of stuff, etc. But pretty soon you begin to chip away at this whole thing. And what begins, you begin to expose the contradiction of the system. Just think about this. Think about if you were as successful as Trump has been in winning people from outside. These are people who haven't participated. All the people you're talking about are people who don't participate, who don't believe in the electoral process. But if we were as successful as Trump in bringing in massive African people on the agenda that we are forwarding, it'll blow this system wide open. We can make them say, well, fuck it, we ain't having no more elections. You understand? It's just like every time they have a marathon and they say, well, we want to have a marathon, we don't want to let people from Kenya run anymore. You understand? Because they know the outcome automatically, somebody from Kenya went first, second, and third, you know, etc. So that's how we have to, and when they say that, we continue to deepen and expose the contradictions in the system itself and show that it doesn't work for us. And the thing is that people always try to solve the problem first the easy way. And if we keep doing certain kinds of things, give people an opportunity to learn through experience, that the Democrats and the Republicans, they can't solve it. The election won't solve it. That's so we go through this. That's not our whole platform, because even if we were doing stuff like this, we're still doing revolutionary work on every other front, you know. So anyway, that's what we're looking at. Uhuru. Yes.
This is Oteka.
Yes, Oteka.
First, I want to just appreciate this PE. It was very informal, as always. My question is specifically for the New York, I guess, region and area, and the work that we want to do. The Black is Back conference was very successful in New York, I think. And I primarily am concerned with how we're going to move forward, specifically with the mass organization of Impedum, and, you know, like what our strategy would be, because I'm noticing that there's a large community of conscious people who seem more or less reclusive, and their motivation is spiritual, largely spiritual. It's not really material. It's not really, you know, revolutionary. Not in the terms that, like, not in the way that the party is, or not in the way that the whole movement is in general. So I don't know if you can speak on that, you know, and how we can struggle with the working class.
The first thing I want to say is this, that the party in Harlem was incredible. That was our conference, you know, and that was the thing that gave it the character that it had from top to bottom. Everything that everybody had to say at that conference was influenced one way or the other by the party. The party came there as a powerfully organized, well-organized machine that everybody had an opportunity to experience and to see. And this is part of what I'm talking about in terms of a handful of people, the opinion of a handful of people becoming the opinion of a broader and broader, because everybody who left there, no matter where they, now some people came from the white left. There were some Negro white leftists and some white leftists who were there, and maybe even some Asian white leftists who were there. But the fact is that nobody could leave there without having been impacted in the most serious way by the partisan analysis. And there are many people who've been won to our understanding of the whole electoral process. They were transformed by that conference. So I want to say that I thought that was extremely powerful. Second, I thought that the New York forces did an incredible job there. And I know that you paid a price for it in terms of perhaps even some of the unity of our forces, etc. But the thing that I think is really important for us to understand in terms of the party, and I heard what you say about NPDUM, and I think the reason you said NPDUM is because there were some people who you were talking about who you know can't be in the party because of whatever it is their belief system contains. But the fact is that there are millions of African people who are not trapped by spiritualism, who are not trapped by all the other kinds of stuff that immobilizes them, and even and those are the people who have to be organized. I mean, that's the truth of the matter is, yes, we are going to run into people say, one person understands, say we are too structured and they're really into spiritual shit. But the average African, you run out there saying, I can't do nothing because I'm spiritual. They don't say that. They're trying to get this beast off their backs. And our programs have to reflect the interests of the masses. And we cannot make our program reflect the interests of a handful of people who are spiritualists or some other things like that. And so NPDUM, the party, concentrates, and we really want to pull those people who are good, who may be good people, maybe honest people, who may be spiritualists and think we're too structured. When you say we're too structured, that means that they can't deal with democratic centralism. And when they say that we are spiritualists, that means they have an ideological difference with us. That's not just an empty phrase, no matter how well intentioned they may be. But that's not true of the vast majority, and we will make a serious error if we will change and shape our politics to meet the requirements of a narrow group of people who cannot see that the primary question we're struggling with is not your spirituality, but that pig that's doing what he's doing in our community. The fact that our people can't eat and shit like that. That is the materialist reality that most African people are confronted with. And I love, you know, I mean, some of the spiritual people they hug you very well, and you know, have other kinds of really positive things. But as materialists, I think that's what we really have to understand as a party of the revolution. And so our whole movement, you know, and we will probably have, you know, really good relationship with spiritualists and etc. But the thing is, our organization has to be based on the material needs and aspirations of our people, who have been gunned down in the damn streets by the police. They're not fighting spirits, they're fighting bullets and people who are trying to eat. And those are the critical questions that I think we're going to be confronted with, Oteka. Uhura.
Can I just?
Yeah, I want you to, but I want to see if Oteka gets where I'm coming from.
Uhuru, I get what you, I unite with that.
Yeah.
Get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's the majority of the people. And there are people who would say, don't do that. Don't do that. Deal with my spiritualism, my spirituality, and that's what we have to be around. And you know, there are people who would say that. What it means is they want us to have another program. But if we do that, then we're not who we are anymore. And then there's no basis for all these people who are suffering. There's no place for them to come to. That's who we have to be. And we can love all those people who, and because I met some of the spiritual people, they seem like wonderful people. You know, they really did seem like wonderful people. But they too are going to have to turn loose this position that separates them from masses of people. Your priority has to be the interest of the majority of our people who are really suffering in the real world. Uhuru, yes, Herdoshi, you about to say?
Uhuru, Chairman.
Yes.
This is 4 feet.
Yes, 4 feet.
And the last religion I was deeply involved in was spiritualism. And until those spiritualist people take control of their spirit and really work for their people, which is us, their spiritualism is just like any other religion that is dead. Excuse my language, until you work it.
Yeah.
You have to work it in a way that it works for you. And, you know, saying I'm spiritualist is great, but until you embody it and put it to work in a place that you can actually serve, that's spiritualism to me. Now, I was one of the biggest ones in the city. So with that,
Uhuru. Yeah, Bruce.
I've heard you mention before about like circumstances will reflect and change the minds of people and drive people into a certain direction. Even for those who are spiritual or religious and whatever, they may not understand it to a certain degree, but they may do, but they have a material interest because they need to eat, they need to have housing and every damn thing else.
Yeah.
So you know, it's still like you said, this is that minority situation that we don't need to be changing our politics up for to compensate that. But just drive this thing to deal with the masses of people who are going further this revolution.
That's I think that's critical that we understand that. Comment Hidoshi, we're going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say to Ocheka that, you know, the EPDM is a beautiful organization and it meets people at a political door where they at. And these people might be spiritual. I was having Tuesday night Bible study at my house faithfully and was very dedicated to the church. And I'm a revolutionary today. So it meets people at a political door. And I wrestled with spirituality within coming into before I joined the party. But I was in EPDM and EPDM was perfect for me at that time. And it won me to a different position. And so, and I didn't need people to, the struggle that I had. And I remember clearly I was talking to the chairman and he said to me, he said that, you know, you use your spirituality as a clutch so you won't have to do nothing, because to understand what the contradiction is mean you got to do something. And it's beyond praying and throwing oil and things like that. But like you said, a material interest, like I have to eat. You know, I need to stop the pigs from killing me. You know what I'm saying? I want my kids to have a future. And so I have to be I have to be in that. And so you just have to meet people at a political door where they at and expose the contradictions and help them see. And then either they're going to stay in EPDM or not be in EPDM or come into the party. But we ain't going to change the program because the wheel has been invented and we know that this works. Because we got Fofi that was at the spiritual church as a reverend, you know, the only black reverend on this spiritual panel, you know what I'm saying, that's in the party now. You have me that was over the youth department, the youth pastor leading people in this. So we not understand. We have, you know, I hear yesterday talking about her spiritual walk or whatever. And so I think that EPDM is a perfect place to meet people at a political door. That's why I love EPDM, because it's our mass work and it's a perfect place. And I talk to a lot of those spiritual people there. And, you know, we got to chop up some stuff and they challenged, and you're going to hear them continue to talk to you about the challenge, but it's for you to stand your ground and continue to speak the truth. And it would either get them ready, prepared, or they're going to go away. You know, and that's what it comes down to.
Uhuru.
I think I gave him a copy of Jesus Was a Revolutionary, the chairman's presentation.
The other thing is we often have an opportunity to help people understand what they mean by spirituality, because in most instances it's rather convenient. Because even as people would use that as an excuse not to join the movement, their spirituality does not keep them from going out and getting a job to pay the white man his rent, or to pay on a car, or to do all those other kinds of things. And so I just think it's convenient. In many ways, it's a form of opportunism, because your spirituality ends where the struggle begins, you know, something to that effect. When it comes to how you're going to feed your children, how you're going to get your rent money, etc. And that's what I say about a lot of people who claim that they, you know, they're so religious, whether it's Christian or anything else, that God will do everything except pay the rent, you know, except do all these other kinds of things. You got to pay, you know, AT&T and Verizon and all that. And people don't just stay home and say, oh, God, pay Verizon, you know, Verizon, you know, it doesn't work that way. So, colonialism, I mean, so the point is that that there's a way that people want to have their spiritualism, and you know, yeah, I mean, you know, you can't do it like that, and you have to help them to understand that sometimes they haven't given it that kind of thought. Yeah. Uhuru. Who is this? Yes, Carmen Sadia.
I just appreciate the reading in particular, the further definition of fascism in particular. My questions are all couched in next steps. You teased us a little bit at the Black is Back conference talking about, November and wanting to announce, an agenda towards self-determination. I just want to lift up or ask if I could, sharing what you can, given the nature of this call, a little bit of a vision around taking advantage of this road to the election. I think the power that we're in right now is, to say it plain, the shit is a mess. And so that's great for us, as revolutionaries and African internationalists to get in there and really paint that road black. And so what I appreciate from, hearing from you and hearing from the party at Black is Back is there's something in the works. So, again, bearing in mind, you can only say what you can say on this call. I just want to hear about that.
Yeah, briefly, I wanted to say something about that because I'm going to be calling on all of you to help shape and define this, because actually it's my idea that I gave to the steering committee that they united with, that we need to identify particular areas that we can identify in the country where we can begin a process of having community meetings to talk about Black agenda. And this agenda, in my view, I think we have to put out the initial part of what we see as being the agenda to help shape the discussion. I don't think we just go and say what you think should be in the agenda, because most people come there from influence by the African petty bourgeoisie, etc. But for example, I would see no taxation for African people being the reparations being on there, freeing all the Africans from prison being on there, especially right now the political prisoners being on there. I would see things on there like immediate withdrawal of the police in all African communities and their replacement with Black community control of the police. I would see it even dealing with issues of international affairs or foreign affairs, AFRICOM out of Africa, all U.S. military and foreign bases off the continent of Africa, ending all money, taxpayer money, and certainly African people's taxpayer money going to the illegitimate state of Israel that's exploiting and killing the Palestinian people. The immediate withdrawal of United Nations forces from Haiti, and the reparations to Haiti from both France and the United States. These are some things that I would see. Black community control of education, which means would have to mean that all of the resources that African people pay in taxes, have paid in taxes, etc., that those resources being made available to the African community so that we can begin to educate ourselves. These are some of the things that I would see that we would be putting forward with our own national agenda for national self-determination. And I've just touched on it because I think I even mentioned perhaps even more things, housing, healthcare. I mean, these are critical questions. And I don't think we want to speak of it in general terms of like what Bernie Sanders and all this other kind. We say Black people, we want this stuff for us because of this history that we've had. And I think this is if we can say we have, let's have a conference building up to November 5th and 6th. We'll have a conference, at least one on the West Coast, maybe more than one on the West Coast, but one, say, in the San Francisco Bay Area. We got a center there where we can put out a whole bunch of work flyers and use whatever media we can to get people to come out. When people come, we can have a preliminary agenda that people can look at, people can participate in adding to and discussing. And we can do that, say, in New York. where Teka is located. And also, I think we have to have a cultural component on there in terms of African cultures, protection of our culture, and also, you know, whatever kind of resources that we need contributing to that. So we have in New York, in Washington, D.C., we should be able to do that as well. And, you know, so there are different component parts, and try to win as much of the community as we can. In every community that we're talking about, there are organizations like trying to deal with Black political prisoners, or this particular Black political prisoner, or something like that, or there are Africans who deal in anti-war, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, these are people who can also come and participate based on unity with the basic principles of the coalition. And I believe we can, if we work this properly, by the time this process is over, we can go into November with a really good agenda, and we can go into November with the rally and the march we're going to do with people who are even coming there carrying these demands on their posters and speaking to these demands from the platform. And what I'm going to be calling for is that people in our party and our movement can contribute to how the overall process should look in terms of building these things around the country, and what should be how do we open it up to people? What should be the kinds of protocols and that would make it possible for people to come in? How do we limit and direct the discussion for the achievement of this agenda? How do we get it written up and have it as a package that we can have pretty well organized when we get into Washington, D.C. on the 5th and the conference on the 6th? And what kind of process should we have then at that conference that would allow for all the people who will have come there to participate in the discussion and voting it up? Yay, this is the agenda we're going to work with. And we will have to have a process through which, no matter what the outcome of that damn election is, that we have massively going out to the world. This is the national, this is the program of national self-determination political agenda as coming from African people. That's kind of what we have to make happen. And I believe we can pick up all kinds of forces in our communities, and you know, I mean, that can play a role in shaping what this agenda looks like. And I think that if we do it in this fashion, we can also enhance the numbers of people who will come out to that rally and to the march on the White House carrying these signs promoting the Black agenda, and then go into that conference the next day saying this is the Black agenda. So that's what I'm looking at. And I'll be looking at people and calling on people who feel like you have some ideas about how we can make this, you know, work best to participate. So anyway, I hope, was that helpful at all, Sadia?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
All right. So comrades, we have to get out of here now. I've been signaled over and over again, and people are beginning to question my discipline because I've kept talking despite the signals. Comrade Secretary General.
Ghazi's gonna come on with the announcement. Ghazi, are you there? Quickly. And after Ghazi is over, I just want to get one last roll call, so please don't just all disappear. Go ahead, Ghazi.
Hello, comrades. For the announcements for today, we have going to blackpower96.org. Blackpower96.org. The radio station is coming in full effect. To donate or to volunteer, please go to blackpower96.org. Also, the Burning Spear has a new website, theburningspear.com. If you have not gone and visited, please visit theburningspear.com. Make sure to visit theburningspear.com daily for updates of news of African revolutionary news that is going on around the world. Make sure also to share those posts at theburningspear.com. Share those posts on your Facebook, your Twitter, your Tumblr, your blog, and with your friends and family so that they can see the revolutionary news that is going on
at thebirdingspirit.com, written by and led by the African People's Socialist Party and Africans all over the world. Next, if you would like to join the African People's Socialist Party, please go to joinapsp.org. Joinapsp.org. If you'd like to join the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, please go to impedum.org. INPDUM.org. Thank you. Uhuru.
I want to also announce that next Sunday, will we be here next Sunday, Comrade Tammy?
Yes. No, I'm sorry. NCC.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, we won't be able to do this. Okay. All right. The next study that we'll do, however, it won't be this Sunday. And let everybody take note, we won't be doing it this Sunday, but the next study is going to be on dialectical materialism again. We'll do it a little better. Now, I think this discussion we just had on spiritualism and what have with spirituality reinforces the need to do that study. Comment, Secretary General.
Uhuru. All right, I want to quickly go over the names so I can get you out of here in time. I have Brenda